This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We're on the road in Salt Lake City, well, right near Salt Lake City, in Park City, Utah, at the headquarters of the Sundance Film Festival, bringing out independent voices of people in this country and around the world. Today, we are ending up with the last family that is featured in the new documentary, Hot Coffee. It weaves several stories together to tell how corporate lobbyists are working to keep citizens out of the courtroom when they've been harmed. For the rest of the show, we're joined by the Gourleys, Lisa and Mike Gourley, parents of twin sons, Colin and Connor. They're all here with us. Colin was born with cerebral palsy because of medical malpractice during childbirth. We thank you all for coming in. Lisa and Mike, start off by telling us very briefly what happened. Well, Lisa, it was 17 years ago, right? When your twins were in utero when you were pregnant. Explain what happened.
I was about 36 weeks along with the boys, and I had noticed a decrease in movement, and I reported that to the doctor, and she dismissed it. She said, you know, don't worry about it. There's two babies in there. There's not a lot of room to be moving around, and she elected not to do any further testing. And so I went home, and 2 days had passed, and the movement had become less and less, and I was very concerned, and went back to called the doctor's office, and they scheduled me in about 3 hours later, and went in and then waited in the waiting room for about another hour, and they did an ultrasound and revealed there was significant problems, that they needed to deliver them right away, and it took about another hour and 15 minutes to do an emergency C-section. So then when they were born, and neither one of them were breathing, they rushed them off to intensive care, and then the news came back that, you know, they were in a lot of trouble, and it was about 5 days later that we found out that there was severe brain damage. And then we realized, you know, all those minutes were very important, you know, during
your wait to have the C-section. Right. But before that, in those days before that, when you would come in saying there's some problem, I mean, just the fact that you were having twins, wouldn't that already be a red flag that your doctor is paying very, very close attention? Yes.
And I had a picture-perfect pregnancy. You know, they had done an ultrasound 2 weeks prior, and everything was completely normal. So instead of, I mean, it would have taken a few minutes, and they could have done an ultrasound, and they would have determined that they needed to be delivered right away, and there wouldn't have been any problems.
Now, what did you find out about this doctor, your doctor, who you had relied on?
We later found out...
what was her name?
Dr. Michelle Nola. And we later found out that she had been sued before, 2 times before, and settled out of court. And then she was actually sued after our case.
As well.
Right.
Mike, weigh in here about your experience and what you went through and how you ultimately decided to go to court.
Well, you know, after Colin was born, there's a lot of questions like any parent would have on what happened, how does this happen. You know, our medical system in the U.S. is the best in the world. So, and I didn't understand how they wouldn't have monitored it. She was 36 weeks when she went into that visit on Monday. That was 36 weeks. So, it was my understanding there should have been an ultrasound by standard of care that day. So, as this happened and we're trying to piece it together, and we're dealing with, you know, all the things that are going through your head of, you know, how is this going to work? I mean, how's he going to be? Is he going to live? Is he going to, you know, is he going to die? And so you start, you know, as any parent, like I said, you start wondering what happened. So, and we weren't getting any real answers. They don't want to give you any real clear-cut answers. Well, this is what happened. So we started asking questions, started getting evasive answers. So we finally ended up, after a couple of years, talking to some a lawyer, and they referred us to a lawyer in Omaha that was a doctor and a lawyer, and he was able to kind of explain what really happened and put it together for us. And then it came out that there's things that they should have done that they didn't do, and then they didn't meet the standard of care, and that was they're liable for that.
So you sued the doctor?
We had to sue. Well, when you bring a lawsuit like this, you have to sue the doctor, you have to sue their employer if they were part of a group, you have to sue that, you have to sue the hospital, you have to sue everybody. Otherwise, they'll just point the blame at somebody else that's not in the suit, and
You go before a jury?
Yes, yes.
How long did the trial take?
Well, it took like 7 years to even get to trial, and then the trial was 3 weeks.
And what did the jury decide?
The jury found Dr. Nola and her group negligent, and they awarded Colin $5 million for medical and $625,000 for pain and suffering. And in the state of Nebraska, there's a cap. So the cap, there was a total cap on everything, and his projected medical expenses were $12.4 million. So a cap.
Right, so the jury decides whatever they decide.
Right.
Right.
And then the judge just changes the decision. So why do they bring a jury into this to begin with? Or why don't they tell them you can't give more than a certain amount?
I'm not sure why they don't do that, but it's part of the legal procedure.
And why does Nebraska have this cap, and how many states do?
Well, the cap like we have in Nebraska that caps both your economic and non-economic damages, there's only 4 states, three that do it totally, and Colorado kind of has a way around it. Like in our case, if the judge would have decided in Colorado that the cap was unconstitutional, he could have thrown out their cap and allowed the verdict to stand. But in other states, I think it's what is it? It's Nebraska and is it
Indiana and Virginia.
Indiana and Virginia have hard caps.
So what was it capped at?
1.25 million.
And there's nothing you can do about that?
Well, what we did, our attorney, right after the decision came back, we went before the judge and had a hearing and said it's unconstitutional. This, to take away the money he needs for his medical bills and, the rest of his life. He's never going to be able to work. And the judge came back and said it was unconstitutional to do that. It violated his right to a jury trial. And at that point, the doctor and the insurance companies appealed the case to the Nebraska Supreme Court. And it took 2 years for the case to go to be heard, and then it took 15 months for them to come back with a decision. And what they did is they reversed the lower court's decision and said the cap is constitutional.
And they've upheld it.
And they've upheld it.
Connor, this must be tough for you. You have been there in the pictures and hot coffee of you and Colin together, growing up together. What are your thoughts about what your family has gone through? You're 17, right?
Yeah, it's not the average life. It's, it's helping him all the time, being there. It's just like, why, If they have so much money, why can't you just help someone out? And why do they have these for other people? I mean, people get hurt all the time, and then it doesn't affect them until they're hurt,
And what does it mean if there is a cap? Who ends up paying?
Well, and what ended up happening with us, our situation, is Colin, we had insurance with my husband's employer, and then he lost his job, and I couldn't get Colin insurance because they would only insure the 3 of us because of his pre-existing conditions and surgeries and therapies and everything. And so he ended up on Medicaid. There's a medically handicapped children's waiver that helps take care of the medical.
So the taxpayer pays.
Right, basically the taxpayers have.
It protects the corporations, but
Correct. And, you know, the doctors had plenty of insurance. Her group and the organization that owned her group, they had millions of dollars in insurance to cover this kind of thing, and they paid their premiums, and the insurance companies contracted, and they have an obligation to take care of these kind of things. But the tort laws just let them go free and keep their money, and the taxpayers have to step up and pay for it.
Are you trying to change the law in Nebraska?
Yeah, we've been lobbying for years in Nebraska, to going down to our state senate and talking to all our state senators, and now, you know, they've all kind of switched over now. We've had a couple elections since then, and we've gone back to D.C. and lobbied a little bit on the federal levels as well. So.
And what does it mean for all of you to be here for this film that brings you together with other people who are not facing the same thing, but the general idea of corporations that have taken precedence over people who are controlling laws?
Well, when this happens to you, I mean, most people don't even know what they've done to the civil justice system or what's going on. They listen to the propaganda and they think, oh yeah, there's all these people filing all these bad lawsuits, and so you know, when this happens to you, you realize what's going on and you see it, but the average person doesn't know. We've been trying to get that word out forever. And
well, I think this movie does, and I thank you very much for being here with us. I want to thank Lisa and Mike Gourley, parents of twin sons, Colin and Connor. Colin born with cerebral palsy, and Colin especially. I thank you very much for being here, and Connor for speaking out for you and your brother. That does it for our broadcast today. We're in Sundance all week. Democracy Now! Produced by Mike Berkshire, the Caduce Aramante, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Renee Phelps, Rouhani Massoud, Robbie Karen, Mike DeFilippo, Miguel Noguera, engineers. Special thanks to Miriam Barnard, Brenda Mira, John Hamilton, Dennis Moynihan, Rebecca Staley, Julie Crosby, Nick Illa, Hugh Grant, Jessel Noor, and to our Sundance crew, Mike Scholes, Richard Lavelle, Jim Lemon, Dave Andrus, and to the entire staff here at Sundance Film Festival. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.